Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast with your hosts, best-selling children's author Amy Parker and author and co-creator of VeggieTales, Mike Naraki. If instilling biblical values in kids is important to you, this podcast will give you the resources, wisdom, and hope to do just that. Now, let's join our hosts, Amy and Mike, for this week's episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast. I'm Mike Naraki.
And I'm Amy Parker.
Today, Amy and I are speaking with Dan DeWitt, who is using his PhD to explain big concepts to little ones. We're going to talk all about those concepts, but first we like to start every Bible for Kids episode with a Bible verse. Amy?
Today's verse was the inspiration for Dan's latest book, and it comes from 2 Corinthians 4:6 from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of God's glory in the face of Jesus Christ.
Dan DeWitt, who has a PhD from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, is Associate Professor of Applied Theology and Apologetics and the Director of the Center for Biblical Apologetics and Public Christianity at Cedarville University. He's the author of several books, including Why God, B&H Kids 2019, Life in the Wild, The Good Book Company 2018, and Jesus or Nothing, Crossway 2014. He posts regularly on his blog, Theolatte. I love that, theolatte.com. Dan, welcome to the Bible for Kids.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you, Amy and Mike.
Yeah, I went to your blog yesterday, and it's pretty funny. And I saw you do some of your own sketches, too. So the sketches on your blog, you did those? They're pretty creative.
Yeah.
All right, blog sketches. Wow,
yes,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You should go check it out. But we'll talk about that too. And I can't wait to get to the book because it's such a great concept. But let's start at the beginning. Growing up, what did your family's faith look like, and what about that made you decide you wanted to dedicate your life to theology and apologetics? Was there a lightning bolt moment, or was it just a gradual thing? Just fill us in a little bit on the background there.
Yeah, so I'm from a Christian family, and I became a Christian at the age of 15. And I think it was 2 years later that I went to art camp at Eastern Illinois University, and then a week later went to youth camp in Ohio at a camp called Camp Chautauqua, which we all called Camp Chewbacca, but
it's close enough.
It's close enough. And so I went, from art camp at a secular university as a teenager to youth camp. And at youth camp, I really felt like God was calling me to do something. And the wonderful naivete of being a teenager who just loves Jesus. And so I surrendered to ministry and closed the door on doing anything artistic. And in a lot of ways, I felt like even creative. All of that was a part of a chapter in my previous life, and I was moving forward into Bible college to do serious things. And at some point, I started reading G.K. Chesterton, and it was in seminary, and realized that he loved art. He illustrated as many books as he wrote. And so while I was in seminary, I actually became mature enough to start drawing again and start caring about making truth simple and not being so impressed with the intellect and trying to be sophisticated, but to recognize that these truths, if they're true, are beautiful and can be communicated in simple ways. So I've been a youth pastor, and man, that's the trying ground. If you could teach truth to a junior high kid and keep his attention long enough. So that's kind of the backstory. And the Lord just keeps giving these little opportunities. I was writing a book on the Apostle Peter about how he messed up. And my editor said, you should take this and make a children's book version of it as well. And that was my first kid's book, and now I'm on my third. So,
wow,
that your story really resonates with me. It's very similar to what happened for me when I was 13 years old when I became a Christian, and I just loved theater and drama and writing and performing and music. Same thing. Went to a youth camp when I was a junior in high school, and surrendered my life and vocation to ministry. And for me, there's certain things that ministry looks like when you're that age. You're a pastor or you're a missionary, and in my case, I grew up in the Christian Missionary Alliance, and so heavy emphasis on missions, and so I decided, okay, I got to get a serious job for God, as a medical missionary. But then obviously, God had different plans for my life, and, ended up as a cucumber. So, but it's those things, you surrender your life and you head in a different direction, but just seeing the wonderful ways that God can use you outside of what you assume, how you assume he can use you. So. You're putting that PhD to work at Cedarville teaching theology and apologetics. So, how long have you been at the college?
I've been here this is my 5th year, and I taught at Southern Seminary and served in different kind of administrative positions for about 11 years. So I've been in higher ed for 15, 16 years, and have done some church ministry along the way. So our church in Kentucky had several campuses, and I was given the responsibility to start a campus on a secular campus. So all of the other campuses were named after the area of town they were in, like, East Campus, West Campus, whatever. Ours was the campus. So we met in a building, very creative. And we met in a building called the Red Barn at the University of Louisville, and it was neither red nor a barn. But colleges
but it was at the campus. So
it was at the campus. That's right.
Yeah.
And we shared the building with the LGBTQ office. So we were the 2 organizations in that building on Sunday nights. And again, that I've always kind of tried to mix ministry and academia. I've been here for 5 years. Wow.
So, and over that, your whole time in academia, what changes have you seen in the students, that you've been teaching, and what surprised you about the students and how these young adults are approaching the study of theology, over this time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we did an event last night on our campus. I lead, as you mentioned, an Apologetics Center, and once a month we'll do a seminar. And our event last night was called Socrates in the Cornfields. And so
okay, yeah. We're kind of like Socrates in the city, but just a little more rural,
country style.
That's right.
So because of COVID, we did it outside. Had a few hundred students gathered on a hillside, all with, socially distanced and all of that. And I interviewed 2 of our philosophy profs, and then students can ask anything they want. Because of COVID, that was a little difficult because we weren't passing microphones around. So this year there was more of just an interview. But one of the things we talked about for our students who mostly come from conservative Bible-believing churches and families, what continues to be surprising to us, and I think also to them, is how deeply influenced by secularism that they are. And their instinct is not to trust supernatural claims. So they believe in God, they believe in Jesus, but they can often have a hard time swallowing these supernatural events in the Bible. And that's one of the things I've seen, just the increasing influence of this kind of atheistic view of the world. And students end up kind of taking that on without noticing it. So, and then, of course, all the other things that you would imagine in terms of the political issues of the day are always prevalent. But I feel like this kind of instinctive skepticism is something that we want to talk about with students regularly.
Yeah, and it's just like, would you call it scientific rationalism, that they're they got to see it to believe it kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, and they feel like, that their atheist family members or friends really have the upper hand, that, they really understand facts, and they're here because they love Jesus and want a degree, but sadly they don't get to have a life of facts. And what we want to remind them of is Christianity is a belief system that's based on a historic fact of Jesus. Yeah. And so, but that is something that continues to surprise me, just how bombarded these students are, and that it affects them in ways that they're not even aware of often. And I'm sure that's true of us as well.
Yeah.
And that must be tough. But, I always go back to, like, you can get all bogged down in the minutia of it, but I always go back to, God created science.
That's right.
Like he was the start, of all of it. And so just because the Bible doesn't explain it all doesn't mean that it's not true. The Bible's not meant to explain it all. As a writer, I get that. I write to my audience. Yeah. My audience, when the Bible was put together, the audience is not scientist. The audience is, the children of God. So he tells that story. He doesn't tell the science story. But anyway, that we could do 14 podcasts on that. But
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So you're the director of the Center for Biblical Apologetics and Public Christianity. So that phrasing piqued my interest. What is public Christianity? Is it just what it sounds like? And what do you do at the center besides direct? Like, what's that look like?
I see you in a director's chair saying, yes, public Christianity, go.
Well, in short, what our center does, and it's funny in academia, you have all these centers, and sometimes they literally do nothing. And so what our center does is not focus on like publishing journals and the kind of things other academic centers would do. Our goal is to serve our student body with the kind of issues we were just talking about. So we do once a month, we do a seminar. Every week we do a coffee meeting where any students can come and we just do Q&A. We call that mere caffeination. So of course, influenced by C.S. Lewis. And then once a year we do a conference where we bring in an outside speaker. So those three things are what we're essentially doing at the center. In terms of the name, we really want to make it clear that we're trying to answer these big questions, and we'll use science and we'll use history and philosophy and evidence, but our authority is the Bible. So we don't kind of step into doing apologetics, which just means to give a defense for the faith. We don't try and do that apart from the Bible or to downplay the Bible, but that we just stayed up front. We believe the Bible, and here's how we're trying to make sense of the world around us.
That's great. Well, we're going to need to take a short break, but we'll be right back with Dan DeWitt on the Bible for Kids podcast. Get swept away by God's awesome story with the Epic Bible. This graphic novel-style Bible features dramatic illustrations created by some of DC and Marvel's best comic book artists. Whether someone is reading the Bible for the first time or looking for a fresh perspective, the Epic Bible's cinematic storytelling will make God's Word come alive and reveal His redemptive plan for all humanity. Perfect for teens, comic book fans, and graphic novel readers. The Epic Bible, God's Story from Eden to Eternity. Available for pre-order wherever books are sold.
Imagine a world where children of every hue know they are equally created in the image of God. This, friends, is God's heart revealed in His Word. A quote from Dorena Williamson. In her beautifully illustrated book, Colorful, author Dorena Williamson tells the story of two best friends who are learning to celebrate their different skin colors. As they look around them at the amazing colors in nature, they can see that their skin is another example of God's creativity. This joyful story takes a new approach to discussing race. Instead of being colorblind, we can choose to celebrate each color God gave us and be colorful instead. This book includes a parent connection, an easy tool to help you discuss the book's message with your child. You can also visit www.bhkids.com for a free, colorful, downloadable activity journal to help you and your kids grow deeper in your faith and understanding of kingdom diversity. Colorful is available wherever books are sold.
Hey, Bible for Kids listeners, we're always looking for ways to give away free resources for you to use with your kids. So look us up on social media and find out what's going on our Instagram and Facebook page at The Bible for Kids.
And we are back on the Bible for Kids podcast. We're speaking with Dan DeWitt.
So Dan, where in this process of studying and teaching theology did you decide to become an author, apart from, academic journals?
Well, I had finished one degree, so my doctorate's in education, which essentially from a theological seminary prepares you to basically be an administrator. And so I have all these kind of misfires in my academic journey because I realized after getting that degree, I actually hate administration. So I ended up transferring that and converting it into a PhD. So it went from being an EDD to a PhD. Mm-hmm. And a part of that was I had to do a writing project. And when I did the writing project, I was at that time leading the university ministry that I described earlier. And I really was wanting to explore more the contrast between the Christian way of seeing the world and the philosophy of nihilism, which is the philosophy that there's no ultimate meaning in the world. So I started working on a writing project. A mentor of mine, Dr. Russell Moore, told me that if I wanted to turn it into a book, that he would write the foreword to it. And so I said, great, I want to do that. That'd be a lot of fun. And so I wrote the book and I sent it to him, and he sent me back, not an email, not encouragement, a PDF file of an Anne Lamott article, which is your cruddy first draft.
Yeah.
So,
and cruddy is in quotes, right?
Yeah. Yes. So, but that's how I got started. And I took her advice and his advice. I rewrote the whole thing, and that became the book, Jesus or Nothing. And then I have a friend who's a Christian hip hop artist. So he did an album based on the book, and he and I did a mini tour together where he would rap and I would talk about the book. So
cool.
I was so hoping you were going to say that you joined him in the rap.
Yeah, I have no giftedness there, but Mike, Larry boy, he can kind of rap. Yeah,
he can.
Oh yeah. I've done some cucumber rapping, and not just in cellophane. I was actually just listening to. We did with Jamie Grace, the Christian singer. We did and one of our songs, Veggies in Space. I did a little rap piece at Larry there for what was the name of the song? Enough to Share, I think. So, anyways,
can you give us just a little sample?
Let's see. Oh boy, you put me on the spot. Let's see. There's a front rolling in and a change in the weather and a dude over there who could use one of my sweaters. Do I give it up? What? Anyway, I can't remember anymore.
It sounds very DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince.
Yes.
Oh, it totally was. Yeah, it totally was. Yeah.
Oh, me. Okay, so Dan, what made you want to start writing for kids? You have kids of your own? Is that what inspired you, or?
Yeah, my last children's book, Why God, which is with the same publisher as this book that's coming out, The Bright Light and the Super Scary Darkness, that was a result of driving to a town nearby us. We live in a little town with 3,000 people and 3 traffic lights, one of which gets shut down during the summer. So when school's not in session, they shut that one down.
It needs to take a break,
That's right. So it gets a summer break too. But we were driving to this little town nearby, and my daughter, just out of nowhere, at that time I think she was 4 years old, and she said, "Daddy, why did God make Satan?" And
that's a good question.
It is, and kids ask great questions. And I thought at that point, I really want to try and tackle some of these big why questions that kids have for my own kids, but then also for other kids, because often we deal with kind of the moral lesson we want to teach, but kids actually do have those underlying deeper why questions. There was one other event that really made me want to write for kids, though, and that was I was watching an interview with Richard Dawkins, who's a world celebrated atheist. And he was talking about his writing for a younger audience. And he's even wanting to write for younger audiences than his most recent book, The Wonder of Reality, or whatever the title was. I forget the exact title. But in the interview, he said, some dumb people teach their children to believe in God.
Wow.
And I thought, if he's writing for children, then how much more do Christians need to be writing for children, and not just dealing with exciting, fun things, but also dealing with the big questions that people like my daughter are asking.
Wow.
And every kid.
Yeah, and somebody needs to do that, because I got to say, we never did a VeggieTales episode on why God created Satan. Although it sounds like it could have been fun.
Yeah. But who would have played Satan?
It would have been Bob.
Yes, he's red. He's red.
That's right.
Just give him some horns and,
That's right. So
a pitchfork or a fork. You're standing on the kitchen counter anyway.
That's right. There's a fork. There's a fork right over there.
We digress.
So Dan, your latest book is called The Bright Light and the Super Scary Darkness. And you use light and darkness, which are such understandable concepts for kids, to describe the story of the gospel and to address anxiety in such a reassuring way. So can you tell us what inspired you to tackle these concepts in light and darkness in the children's book?
Yeah, so I love that verse that Amy read earlier from Paul's writings from 2 Corinthians. And that verse stood out to me years ago in terms of it. Paul there is connecting Jesus with the creation of the world in this way that explains all of human history, that the God who spoke light into being, that is shown through the corridors of time, and it's made its way into our hearts through Jesus. And so I love that verse of how it really is just a one little verse that kind of explodes out and explains all of the Bible. So I wanted to use that as a way, like you said, Mike, that children, we all understand this idea. We're afraid of the dark or whatever. The battle between the light and darkness in movies like Star Wars and Marvel movies, and to use it as a motif to help explain the big story of the Bible to kids. And I often, what I'll try and do when I have opportunities to teach younger audiences is to try and point to the big story of the Bible so that they can help. I heard one person illustrate it this way. Often we give kids the individual stories of the Bible, kind of like a Christmas ornament, but sometimes what kids don't have is the tree to know where to hang all those stories in.
Right.
And for me, this verse helps do that.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And the illustrations in this book, and there's even like a little trailer video. Is that out there? Can people go see that trailer video?
It is. It's on YouTube, and there's a link if you go to the Amazon for the book. It's on the Amazon page.
Okay, so just listeners, go watch that. It's so sweet and so cute, and you can get a glimpse of these illustrations, but they're so powerful, and they really add a lot to the concept of the story. I just love how there's a clear beam of light cutting through the darkness throughout the illustrations. So did you go into that story seeing it that way and knowing that's what the illustrations would look like, or was that something that developed in the process?
This will be my third illustrated children's book, and I just am blown away each time by the creativity of these artists. And so the artist we worked with for this project, she lives in China. She's originally from China, and she is just great at contrasting light and darkness. And so I don't know that I could claim any. I don't know. I have to give her all the credit. That's what I'm trying to say. I was just blown away. I'm like, man, that's way better than anything I would have thought of, because I primarily do black and white sketches. So I end up with I love them. So,
well, probably better than, Thomas Kincaid, who's the painter of light. You need somebody who's also the painter of light and darkness.
That's right.
For this particular book, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Nope. All right. Nope. We're going to take a break. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Dan DeWitt on the Bible for Kids podcast.
Give generously, save wisely, live appropriately. Don't you wish you knew how to handle and manage your money better when you were a teenager? Do you want to provide the teens in your life with a tool to help them better prepare for the future? In the Money Challenge for Teens, author Art Rayner introduces readers to some fictional young friends who are navigating financial waters and learning how God would want them to face college choices and car loans and thoughts about retirement. Yes, even as a teenager. While reading about the fictional friends' steps and missteps, readers will learn simple, practical lessons and adopt real-life goals to start their journey to a healthy and godly financial future. And check out Art's other titles as well: The Money Challenge, The Marriage Challenge, and Find More Money, all available everywhere books are sold. Author April Graney is back with her new kids' book, The Marvelous Maker. For a limited time, buy The Marvelous Maker at Lifeway.com and receive The Marvelous Mud House for free. Here's a taste of the book.
The beginning was good. All was as it should be for Adamus and Genevieve, until dark desire filled their eyes, and they gave in to the tricky tempter's lies. But the Maker heard their cries and humbly took on flesh, vowing to the tempter, "I'm not finished with you yet." Creation, fall, redemption, and the hope of final restoration. The Marvelous Maker by April Graney, available everywhere books are sold.
Okay, favorite listeners, we are always giving something away. Free books, yay! So to win, check out our instructions on Instagram and Facebook at The Bible for Kids. and just look for the Bible for Kids podcast at Google or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We are back on the Bible for Kids podcast, and we're speaking with Dan DeWitt.
So Dan, The Bright Light and the Super Scary Darkness, your new book, do you have a favorite spread or passage from this book?
Man, that's so hard, especially when it's something you write.
Because it's all so good.
Yes.
Well, people ask me what my favorite silly song is, and that I just could never really answer that with a single answer. So I get it.
With a previous children's book I did, I immediately had my favorite line from the book. It was about Peter denying Jesus and the resurrection, and the line is, "But Peter didn't stay sad because Jesus didn't stay dead." And I just haven't quite in this one landed on it because we keep using the sound for the sound darkness makes. So I think if throughout the book, we talk about how darkness can be scary and it even can sound weird. But then by the end of the book, we turn it and make it to where the sound is actually not the darkness being scary, but rather the darkness is a scaredy cat. And it's the sound the darkness is making when it's fleeing away from Jesus after the resurrection. And I think that's probably my favorite point in the story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. I think it makes me think a little bit of, the Narnia series, when I think it was the first book when Aslan was, creating the world from the darkness and the music that was ringing out and kind of the sound in the darkness in creation. So anyways, that's a mental imagery.
Spoken like a film guy. Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite scenes from Narnia too, by the way. I just so love that Aslan creating the world and singing it into being.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So what do you want kids and parents to walk away with from this story?
Well, I hope that they're encouraged in terms of just their anxiety or fear that they might have about darkness in general. But then I think in a bigger way, I hope that they realize that no matter how dark life can seem, and some kids who read it will have experienced a lot of darkness.
Yeah.
I hope they get a deeper sense, more than just there's not a boogeyman in the closet or something like that. But no, that was not a VeggieTale reference, but God is
bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV.
But to get this, just a hope that no matter how dark things are, in the end, God triumphs over the darkness. Yeah.
And I think that's a great message for kids and adults, because there's a lot of darkness out there.
That's right.
So for our parents out there, Dan, can you tell us a little bit about your blog, which is the latte one, Theo Latte? Yeah. So
yes.
It's got a little bit of everything, science and humor, something about boys and gas. I think we did a research on that, theology, and what other kind of stuff can we find in there?
So Theo Latte is what you get when you combine theology and caffeine. And so
I'm in.
Cheers.
I'm
toasting my coffee cup at you right now.
I just have water, so I'm not very, brand consistent here right now. But I try to combine my passions and what I really enjoy. So there's a lot of references to C.S. Lewis. In fact, a lot of the sketches are Tolkien, Lewis, Chesterton. So I publish sketches there. Also, I try to write a couple of posts a week, and then every weekend I do kind of a roundup of articles I think that are interesting from a Christian perspective. So I do a weekend worldview reader, and I usually publish that somewhere between Thursday and Saturday. And so that's just intended for people to read some articles I think are interesting, and then I'll always have a video to watch because I learn more sometimes from watching and listening than I do reading. Mm-hmm. So that's what you can find at theolatte.com.
All right, I'm there.
Nice plug. Yeah, well, and I read part of it and I thought this is something so I have older boys and my younger son is 16, and you did one on, the possibility of discovering life on Mars. And I thought this is exactly something that he would read and that would speak to him. And you don't see a lot of, theologically based articles that combine, that that really deal with science in a relevant way. I don't know. I just thought that was something that would really interest my son. Last night at 8:00, we all ran out the front door to watch the International Space Station go over, So those kinds of things really engage him. And I just loved that. So even for your teenage boys or whatever, I feel like that blog can be a powerful tool to explain some of those concepts.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So you've got so much good stuff out there. Tell our listeners where they can find, so we talked about your blog, theolatte.com, LATTE.com, and your books, how they can connect with you. How can they get their hands on your books and stuff?
Yeah, so if you I have an author page on Amazon, but you can get to that just if you visit theolatte.com. And I've written for adults some apologetic works, and my goal is really to kind of be in between the academy and the university and normal people in the church. And to really, what I spend my time researching and writing isn't to contribute to scholarship in the academy, but really to translate what really smart people are doing and try and make it accessible. And so my goal is that my books for adults or for children, that they're all trying to do the same things, which is just explain these in simple terms. So I'm really influenced by something C.S. Lewis said years ago. He said that before someone can be ordained for ministry, they should have to take some writing from previous generations of the church, some ancient writing, and translate that into contemporary language that real people can understand.
Yeah.
And I think if we applied that test, there would be a lot of people who would still be working on their ordination, perhaps.
Well, I find the same thing in storytelling too. It's usually when you boil things down and kind of simplify the plot, it can actually be richer. The meaning can be more enhanced because you're not trying to figure out what's happening here. The core truth is emerging much more readily. So I love that.
And I think that's, sort of God's theory about things too. He always, and Jesus always brought things to us simply, and he always put things in simple parables that were, that aren't so necessarily relative to us, like grapes and sheep and stuff like that. I don't have sheep in my backyard, but a lot of those people did. And so Jesus was the ultimate model for that, for boiling things down. That's not what was going on in his head, but he boiled it down for us. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. I think that should be all of our goals.
Absolutely.
As communicators. Yeah.
So Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so much fun speaking with you, and really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Mike and Amy. It's so great to meet you, and thanks for the opportunity to be on the program today.
Oh, absolutely. And listeners, you know that we're always giving away free stuff on our socials. So don't forget to follow us on Instagram or Facebook at The Bible for Kids, or at our website, thebibleforkids.com. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bible for Kids podcast with Amy Parker and Mike Naraki. Be sure to connect with The Bible for Kids on Instagram, Facebook, and at thebibleforkids.com. The Bible for Kids podcast is powered by the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Find out more at christianparenting.org. Our show is also available on waynation.com.
Christian Parenting.